first and foremost, Harriet and Amber, we wanted to learn a bit more about your time here at Cardiff University. So I don't know, perhaps briefly you could kind of summarise your time at university, maybe any extracurricular interests you had or favourite modules. So I don't know, Amber, did you want to start?
Yeah, that's fine. So it's actually quite a while ago now. I actually joined Cardiff Uni in 2014 and then graduated in 2017. So I think it's coming up to 4 years since I left. So going back to memory now. But yeah, I absolutely loved Cardiff. I tried to get involved with like as much as possible. So my first year I was actually quite nervous for going away from home, which is so unlike me. I think we've all probably been there a bit scared about, you know, doing something different. So I got involved with the uni law netball team, and I'm actually really short and not the best at netball, but it was just really good to like meet other people in, you know, in the same like course and things like that. So that was really good. I also got involved with things like the Commercial Awareness Award, which I believe you may still have going on. I think they started it when I was there, which was just really, really useful to broaden my knowledge there. I also did the client interview training, which was also really interesting with the pro bono unit. And then in my third year, I got involved with the Enactus Society, where I worked with refugees on like social enterprise ideas and things like that. So a bit of a range of interest and activities I got involved with. I was also the student ambassador, but for the social sciences, because I did law and criminology. But that was just a really good way of promoting the university and, you know, developing lots of transferable skills. So yeah, got involved with a variety of things.
Thanks, Amber. And Harriet, how about your time here at Cardiff? That's obviously more recent, isn't it?
Yeah, so I only graduated last year. Like Amber, I did joint honours, so I did law and politics. But it was only 3 years. And yeah, I absolutely loved my time. When I first joined university, I thought I wanted to do politics 100%. I was like, I don't want to do law. I don't know why anyone wants to do law. Why have I signed up to do law at uni? What am I doing? But then I really got into it. And like Amber, I threw myself into loads of extracurricular things. And Tom said there's a range of people from first year right up to postgrad maybe on this call. So I would recommend, if you're wanting to try anything new, now is the time to do it, because I, like Amber, started playing netball at uni. I haven't played since I was about 12, and I found I really enjoyed it. I played for law and politics, so I got to meet people on both sides of my course, and that led to me then becoming, I was captain of the politics society, of the politics netball team, and then I went on to be the sports rep. And I know law has the same opportunities to grow and stuff like that, and that definitely helped me with some transferable skills for applications, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on. But yeah, so I did a lot of netball. I also did mentoring, student mentoring. So I'm guessing this is all done virtually this year, but we had a kind of group of first year students who we helped settle into university life. And I found that really rewarding. I loved doing that. And then I went on to become a mentor consultant. So in my final year, I mentored the mentors, which was great. And then something I did in final year was joined the Express radio team. So that was something completely unrelated to my studies, but I really enjoyed it, and I found it really helped me grow in confidence. So if there's anything random that you're thinking of doing, don't think like, oh, I've not got time for it because of my studies and stuff. University is there to enjoy, and it makes you such a better whole-rounded person if you try these things out, and you might find out that you really love them. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Thanks, Harriet, and thanks, Amber. That should give students here in attendance kind of a bit of background about you. So I think Aditya's got the next question for you both.
Thanks, Tom. So the next few questions we have is more about the application process and assessment centres. But firstly, about selecting the right law firm. As you know, there's a lot of reasons to take into account when applying for a law firm. So it'll be interesting for the students here to hear about the different factors that attracted you to Baker McKenzie and TLT. So Harriet, would you like to go first?
Yeah, fine with that. It's a bit of a strange one. Some people seem to think they know where they want to join straight away, and don't be scared if you have no idea of the kind of firm that you'd like to work for, because I didn't at the time. I found the law fair really, really helpful at Cardiff. I went every year that I was at uni, and first year I didn't really have any idea what I was doing. I just thought I'd go along for the freebies, and then as I went on throughout the years, it really helped me get a bit of direction of where I wanted to apply to and get some tips and stuff. So the first experience I had with TLT was at the law fair, which was really great because it gave me a point of contact with them, and that I got the loads of brochures and leaflets and websites and things, virtual events to attend, because TLT has a few offices, and the closest one to Cardiff was in Bristol. But I'm actually from more around the Manchester area, so that's partly why I was interested in TLT, because they have a range of offices, and I wanted to come back to Manchester basically. So I went along and spoke to them, and the people there were just instantly so friendly. And I was kind of put off maybe by some of the magic circle, as people call them, law firms, because I thought I wouldn't fit in. It's all too corporate for me. So when I found TLT were super friendly and just seemed like normal, like friendly people, I thought that is the kind of place that I would love to work. So I attended some virtual events. They had like an open evening, which I went to. And then from there, obviously just got stuck into the applications. But part of the reason why I looked there was based on location. Now, that's not something that some people don't mind about. They're not bothered about where they want to be, but I knew I wanted to be in Manchester. And then the other deciding factor for me was the type of law that they practice in. So they have a clean energy sector, which I'm really interested in working in. And I thought it's a bit different to some of the other firms. So that's mainly why I chose to apply to them. And don't get me wrong, I didn't only apply to TLT. There are many other law firms, but probably the binding factor of them all was just how friendly the people seemed to be, and the fact that I thought I would fit in that kind of working environment.
Brilliant. Thanks, Harriet. Amber?
I had a similar experience in first year, and definitely only went to the law fair for the freebies. I also didn't, I kind of went into my first application season like very blind, like didn't really know what I was doing, didn't really have direction. I didn't know anyone in the legal industry, didn't really have any kind of like support where, you know, anyone could guide me. So I must admit that I just applied to firms because their names were at the law fair, or, you know, I Googled them and their names came up, and I knew I wanted to work in London. So I think, again, yeah, as Harriet said, the location does help you kind of decide what firms you want to go for. As I'm sure you already know, there are loads of law firms in London, so that didn't really narrow down my search. And then as I went through university, I really started to kind of understand what I found interesting. So I started finding, I really enjoyed the commercial awareness course. So that helped me decide I wanted to go for a commercial law firm. And then I was doing loads of research trying to find out about all the different practice areas. And then I think it wasn't until probably my third year when I'd met the firms a couple of times, and I think, as Harriet said as well, just meeting the people, because if you go on all the websites for all the law firms, they all claim the same thing. All their, you know, all the marketing is very similar, and it's really hard to distinguish them. So until you actually go and meet the people and hear about their experiences and hear about what it's like to actually work there, it's really difficult to know. So I think the key things that I wanted was there's particular areas of law that I was interested in within the commercial law bracket. I wanted to work in London, as I said. I wanted a firm where there was international opportunities to work with as well. So that's kind of where I was going towards. But in all honesty, I never thought I'd end up at Baker McKenzie. I also felt that the magic circle, big old traditional firms as well. Well, just I wasn't going to fit in, I wasn't going to fit the mold. Just thought maybe I need to go for a smaller firm. And then I got into my paralegal role at Baker McKenzie, and I'm sure maybe touch on that a bit later, but it really opened my eyes up to how inclusive the culture was, and how they were really proactive on diversity and inclusion as well. So that was another aspect that interested me. So I would just really encourage you just to do your research, but also like attend as many events as possible. And luckily things are virtual now, so you don't need to go to the city or wherever to actually, you know, take a whole day out or evening. You can just log on for an hour and really get to know the firms better.
Thanks both. And Amber, what you just raised there kind of feeds in really nicely to our next question. So there's been quite a marked transition to remote working, as you mentioned. Do you think there's any sort of skills that students should, you know, be keen to kind of develop in order to excel rather in a virtual working environment? Maybe Harriet, we'll go with you first to give Amber a rest.
To be honest, Amber is probably more suited to answering this question, because I'm not doing a paralegaling or anything like that. So at the moment, I just work in a supermarket, key worker life. But no, so I've not actually been working virtually, but there are obviously skills that anyone can use. And I've done some volunteering and things like that, which I've had to adapt from being in person to being online. So I would say one thing is definitely, I mean, this applies whether you're in person or online, but being able to organise your day properly. And I'm sure you guys have become so great at this with not having real life lectures to attend and watching recordings and things like that, but having the structure to know the tasks that you've got to get done by the end of the day, and being able to fit them in without there being someone watching over you or someone thinking, oh, what's that person sat next to me doing? Because there isn't any of that, obviously. But I would say probably the key thing is resilience, which I'm sure, again, everyone has really, really grown over this year. Because, as I say, there's not that person sat next to you. So you are going to need to be able to have the confidence to reach out to someone and listen out for when other people are reaching out to you as well. And that's in all kind of, settings, whether that's actually work that someone needs help with or that you need help with, or kind of on a more emotional level. These people are still your friends and your colleagues, and it's not always as simple as knowing that someone's upset because they've not got the camera turned on and stuff like that. So I think just being able to adapt to different situations really well is important, and that's something that you guys will have done incredibly over the past year. And with that just comes the confidence to talk out and network with people who you've never met before through a computer, whether that's through social media like LinkedIn and stuff like that, or again just through Zoom. So just having the confidence to attend any events that really get thrown your way or opportunities that spring up.
Thank you. And Amber, perhaps you've picked up some advice really and put it into practice in your paralegaling role.
Well, yeah, Harriet, considering you haven't had the experience, you just did a great answer. Because I was thinking the similar kind of skills about being resilient, particularly at the moment where, everyone's going through different experiences. It's mentally, exhausting as well. Having to always look at our screens, whether it's our laptops, our phones, TVs, there's always a screen around us at the moment. Sorry. And I think the other thing alongside resilience is patience, because I must admit there's a couple of times where I wanted to throw my laptop out the window because the Wi-Fi has been slow or the technology I'm using has been slow. So I'm in a house share, so similar to probably you guys at university, where there's numerous of you trying to work on a Wi-Fi and it can just absolutely drain it. So I think it's having that patience of being like, okay, it's not working right now, what can I do to improve it? Do I just need to leave it for a moment and take myself away? Can I do something else to be more productive? And just really having that discipline, because it can be so easy just to get very frustrated, but also being patient with your colleagues. luckily I don't have any children right now, so I can just work and focus on work, whereas some of my colleagues have small children, so they're having to trying to respond to me, but also handling their little ones as well. So it's just, you know, keeping those considerations in the back of your mind and when you are working with other people. And I think the final point I would say, and it kind of touches on what Harriet was saying about people aren't around you, so they don't know what your capacity is like. They don't know whether you're absolutely swamped and you can't help with any more work, but they could still be emailing you and you're just taking it all on and it's just getting too much, and then you're not doing anything right. You know, it's getting too much. But also the other side of things is if you haven't got enough work, then you're obviously not developing and, you know, pushing yourself forward. So it's really important to be proactive and make sure you reach out to the right people and get that work or get the support that you need as well.
Thank you. I think there's some great advice in there for students.
Brilliant. The next question we have is about the assessment centres. So on the topic of working in a virtual environment, and considering that law firms over the next few months will be conducting virtual assessment centres, what tips would you give students in terms of achieving a successful outcome, and what skills do they require in doing their assessment centres really well? Amber, would you like to start?
Yeah, I can go ahead. So just to give you all a bit of background, I've done assessment centres in person, but I also did virtual assessment last year, and that's when I actually secured my training contract. So don't be scared the fact that the assessment centre could be virtual. It has its pros and cons. So I found it quite nice to be, you know, in my own home comforts rather than having to go into the big scary office and being around people when you're nervous. But then also, I guess the downfall is you don't have as many big breaks between the different activities you've got going on. So, for example, with Baker McKenzie Assessment Centre, I think it was about 4.5 hours in the end, with about two-minute breaks, because it was just, I think we were supposed to have maybe like 5-10 minutes, but you know, sometimes these things get delayed because of technology again. So my brain afterwards was very tired. So I would just really advise you that if you have got a virtual assessment centre, make sure you go for a walk in the morning, just to really clear your head and get away from the desk. And then when you go to it, you'll be there for a couple of hours, but you can then really focus. But in terms of the actual activities, I think the first thing is to look at what is the assessment centre going to include, because they're all quite similar, but as I'm sure you're aware already, but the firms have different tasks that you may have to do. And depending on that, I think it depends on how you prepare for it. But what I can advise you on is what I experienced. So with Baker's, I had a document review task, which was done on Survey Gizmo, and I just had to go through a legal document and identify any errors. Then I had a interview with the associate, and that was based on like competencies, so talking about my different experiences. So that's why it's so important you do get involved with as much as possible at university, because you can then talk about things like that. I then had a group exercise, so you'd go on camera like this. You'd have some documents to look at, and then you work as a team to get to a solution, or you do a negotiation or something like that. The main difference, I think, for the assessment centre is the fact that it's obviously in person and virtual, you can read people's body language, whereas and there's not the technical like delays. So when you're on camera, you have to be really conscious that there may be a delay, and so talk slower, refer to people's names, and it's good that they're on screen. And if you do have any kind of technical errors there, just kind of try and stay calm in that situation and use it as an example that you can handle, you know, problems happening. And then the final stage I had was the partner interview and case study, which was very difficult, I must admit. But it was really nice to speak to the partners, because they're not trying to trick you out. I think that's really important to flag. They're not actually these big scary people. They are just adults, and they are usually wanting you to show your best. So try and stay calm in those situations. Did that answer your question?
Indeed, yes. Harriet, would you like to have a go?
Yeah, so I had a bit of a different experience. So when I applied for my training contract with TLT, the way their process works is I applied for the vacation scheme first, and then after that follows on the training contract process. And when I started the whole process, as you know, they're super long processes. There was no such thing as coronavirus knocking around. So I actually had an in-person assessment centre for my vacation scheme, which ended up really being the main way that we were assessed, because obviously a lot of firms did adapt to having virtual vacation schemes, whereas TLT didn't have the technology in place at the time to put that forward. So I didn't end up having my vacation scheme, which I was absolutely gutted about, because it's such a good time to showcase your skills and stuff like that. But that ended up meaning that because I'd been offered the vacation scheme, I did then go on to have a training contract interview, and then that was on Zoom. So I've had a bit of experience in both. I've recently just written a blog post on TLT's kind of trainee blog type thing, which is available for students to access if anyone wanted to have a look at it. That gave all of my top tips for assessment centres. So if anyone wanted anything more in depth on there, particularly to do with TLT, but for other firms as well, there is some information on there. But I was similar. So I had a group based task, which mine was to design a ideal law firm, and it was just about working together. And even if you have those group tasks on Zoom, there are still key factors to it that you can succeed in, and they're the same that are in person. So it's listening to other people but having a strong input, taking on different roles, such as maybe being the timekeeper, or using the time to get across your commercial awareness, by showing what you know about successful law firms and how you can apply that, and all these sort of things. And I found it really helpful to talk to people who've done group exercises before to kind of see what to expect, because I had no idea. I thought, oh, what on earth is this going to be? And that made it less daunting on the day, because I had actually had to think about what kind of activities they might ask us to partake in. So that, that wasn't as daunting for me as I think it could have been, because I was well prepared for it. But the one thing that I did find really important, I would say, is that applying your commercial awareness in all aspects of the day, because then my interview was a skills-based interview, and I found it quite difficult to get across commercial awareness when you're talking about your personal strengths. Certain questions obviously lend themselves to commercial awareness, but if they're asking why they think you're a strong leader, for example, it can be quite difficult to fit in, everything about, the corporate sector and things like this. So just really compartmentalizing the day before you go to realize where you're going to be able to get these certain skills in, and that'll just put you at ease that you've ticked all the boxes that they're looking for, and showcased every skill that you've clearly got to get to that point of being in the assessment centre. But I would say virtually, I, like Amber, found it quite comforting to be in my own home. I still got dressed up the way I would have if I was in going there in real life, but being able to sit at my own desk and not being panicking about, is my train going to arrive on time, or my bus, those kind of things are a lot easier. But I did find it daunting, because like many Zoom meetings, I was put in a waiting room before it started, and I was in the waiting room for like 20 minutes or something, and I thought they were never going to let me in, or I've got the wrong link or something. I was panicking for the whole time, trying to stay calm and look calm in case he turned my camera on at any point. But I would just say you've all obviously had a lot of practice at these kind of things, and just having the confidence that you know what you're doing, you know how to work this technology now, you know how to mute yourself, you know how to unmute yourself, turn on your camera, having a plain backdrop, all of these things, and you've worked out by now. And I would say having the confidence to know that you can adapt to those skills is important. And finally, I would say that it's scary doing it virtually, but it's also scary for anyone the first time they do something. So for me, doing them in person was daunting because I've never done an in-person assessment centre before. And that is just the same for you guys. Just because you've never done a virtual assessment centre doesn't mean that you're in any way disadvantaged. So you just got to have the confidence in yourself, really.
Thank you. And for any students that are interested, just for your convenience, I'll pop the link to Harriet's article, the blog post in the chat now. So moving on to the next question. What was the biggest learning curve from your rejected applications? We'll start with Amber.
Well, I had a lot of rejections, to be quite frank. And for those of you who don't know, I actually applied for law firms 5 years in a row. I don't want that to scare you, because as I said earlier, when I first started applying, I just had no direction. I didn't really have the right support, and I didn't reach out for it either, because I just was very lacked the confidence as well, and just was very unclear about what I was doing, I think. So in my first 2 years, my first year actually, I got to assessment centre, which was great, but I got there and just didn't know what to expect. And I think you never will fully know what to expect, but I didn't even know how to prepare for it. So I just went in there really, really kind of blind, but also the firm wasn't for me at all. I had quite like an intimidating experience, and it just made me realize, actually, I'm not going to apply for any odd firm. I'm going to go and meet them, as I said earlier, to actually find out if I would fit in with the firm, if I would get along with people, because you can enjoy the work, but it's crucial that you get along with the people, because everyone likes to, work with people they like. So yes, that was my first year, just trying to think, it's quite a while ago. And then second year again, I just was applying, but I, made small tweaks to my applications, but I wasn't being critical enough. And again, I wasn't asking for their help. In my third year, I think I needed a handful of applications, and actually said to myself, okay, I'm going to take a bit of a step back, focus on my grade, and get more experience and research into what am I actually supposed to be doing to actually understand the process. So I think one of my biggest tips would be just go back to basics and really find out what is the route into securing a training contract, what boxes do you need to tick, and then work out a plan about how you can develop skills for each stage to get there. And then in my fourth and fifth year, been a long old journey, I joined an organisation called Strive, and you may have heard of them on LinkedIn, but they're called Strive Consultants, and I can share a link to their website. But they put me with a mentor, and this is the first time I was actually having some sort of guidance and support. And I spent 8 weeks, 2 hours every week on like a online workshop with them, and they talked me through the whole process, and really explained what was the employer looking for, and so even the what's in glazier stage, going down to basics and thinking, okay, what are they actually asking at each section, and just really understanding what they were looking for. So I would suggest definitely it's great that you're already here. That's, I think, a first step, but really do use all the resources around you. I think you've already got an advantage, the fact that you're at Cardiff University, because I know that they have amazing resources and so many things out there. But also be critical on yourself. You have to put your ego almost to one side. You spend hours on an application, which I'm sure is a really good application, but sometimes there's certain things you need to tick to get through the training contract application forms. And so, for example, as you can tell, I like to talk, I'm a bit of a waffler, but on application forms, being a waffler is not good. So I had to really learn to be concise, just to cut out words, cut out fancy words as well. I very much tried to put in these really long words that I would never use, just to sound more intelligent. But instead of doing that, I needed to be like no, look at what skills and amazing things I do have and I can showcase without trying to be someone I'm not. And I think that's so crucial, because I think now as well, law firms are becoming more diverse. They don't want a robot, they don't want one type of person. The biggest thing that's going to make you stand out on your applications is showing off your unique skills, and being really personal, but also linking it to, you know, transferable skills and those business requirements that you need to obviously fulfill that position. So hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. And Harriet, do you have any advice? I imagine there's some similar points, but.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, like, any person who has succeeded in getting a training contract without having some form of rejection is like Wonder Woman, because I also had a lot of rejections. As I said, when I first joined university, I didn't want to do law, so I didn't apply for anything in my first year. You know, whether that be vacation schemes and things like that. But I kind of wish I had, because I think any kind of work experience teaches you whether you're suited to that role, whether you like it, whether it's something you want to pursue, or on the same, you know, similarly beneficial is if you hate that and you decide, no, this is really, like Amber was saying, this is not the firm for me, this is not the kind of thing place I want to be working. And you know, most firms now have adapted to having online vacation schemes. So really go for those. That's my biggest piece of advice, would be to get to know the places where you're applying to. As Amber said, you can kind of have this approach that the more places you apply to, the more success you're going to have. And the biggest, strongest piece of advice I ever got was when I attended an open evening of a different firm, not the one where I've got my training contract, but an alternative one. And someone said to me, when we read applications, it is so obvious when you've just sent one application and tweaked it, but you've sent it to 15 firms, because it, you know, the way you answer a question should be so specific to the firm that you're applying to, whether that's, you know, what previous work experience have you had? Obviously, you've had the same work experience for any firm that you're applying to, but the reasons, you know, taking what experience you gained and why that makes you want to work for the firm that you're applying to, or, you know, what you learned from that is different to the firm you're applying to, and this is why you want to explore a new element of, you know, a new sector or a different way of working. And I think those are really crucial takeaways from any applications, because as you know, you've got to be really authentic, but as Amber said, there are ways to tick boxes for training contracts, and unfortunately that's the way the game works. And it took me a few applications to learn that. I thought, well, you know, they should like me for who I am, like, this is my application, this is what I've got to say. But you learn they do like you for who you are. It's just kind of picking up the professionalisms along the way. And as Amber said, being critical of your own applications. So I always made a copy of every application I sent off, and then the next time I looked at it, I would think, oh, I can't actually believe I said that in my first application. Why would I put that? That is such a bad thing to put. And looking back, and self-reflection is really important, because that's how you build, and how I ultimately think I secured a training contract. But also remaining positive, because it's so easy to be critical and think, no one wants me, I'm never going to make it, I'm not good enough. When you really are. Everyone on the Zoom call is good enough to make it. But it's just finding the right place for you. And without getting to know the firms properly, not just looking on their websites, you're never going to do that. So whether that's following them on social media, following people who work there on social media, trying to talk to people. Obviously, some people are going to be more open than others, but trainees, for example, have done it recently. They are usually more than willing to talk to you about their experience. And I would say reach out for those things. It might be scary, but the worst thing that someone's going to do is ignore you. So just go for it, put yourself out there, and learn from your mistakes, but stay resilient always.
Thank you. And as you say, there's no harm in asking, is there? That's actually how we managed to secure some of our speakers for the Law Society this year. And I think Amber, I seem to recall, reached out to us, and I think you did as well, Harriet. So Yeah, that's some great advice. Aditya, I think you've got the next question. And I expect students have seen that the link to the Strive consultants has been popped in the chat. So thanks, Amber.
Thanks, Tom. So as you mentioned, work experience is really helpful in evidencing your skills and abilities. But we know that work experiences are really hard to get, and in light of COVID, these work experience opportunities are scarce. So in what ways do you think students can upskill themselves and increase their employability? Harriet, would you like to start?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to start. I think all of the kind of things that Amber and I spoke about in the very first question about what we did at uni are things that helped us gain experience. And none of those things we spoke about were work experience specifically. So even though it is really difficult to obtain at the moment, there are so many things that you can do, and don't let that see it as a barrier, because law firms, many law firms, will really value kind of extracurricular activity just as much as work experience. It's just the way you phrase it on your applications. So for example, being a student mentor, you can do that virtually through uni. You can reach out to talk, be guest speakers at certain events, talk to lower years through the Law Society or through other areas of, you know, not subject focused societies at university. And those are all still open, whether they be on Zoom. You know, it doesn't make a difference. You're still doing it. You're still putting yourself out there and you're still gaining those skills. And what I've found is, obviously, when you're writing a CV, you should keep it updated with every new thing you do. You should keep it updated, but I definitely wasn't that organized. But I even just had something as simple as a list of things on my notes on my phone. So when I've, you know, attended an event, I've been to a seminar that was an optional seminar and I really enjoyed it and I met this person, I just put it in my notes. And then when I came to applying for applications, you have a much longer list of things than you would probably expect, and you'll surprise yourself that these things do add up. So I would say any kind of volunteering that you can do, whether that's completely unrelated to law or not, super helpful. I volunteered with Girl Guiding throughout, you know, I was from being a young age, and throughout university as well, and that really helps. But also a lot of law firms will have virtual events going on, whether that's seminars, so current solicitors talking about, I don't know, like I said before, the clean energy sector. They might have a seminar on how the retail industry has changed recently. And you can attend those events and you can sign up to mailing lists, which will let you know when those events are happening. So lawcareers.net is a really good place to look for those kind of things. And also using, I think Helen McNally is still the careers advisor at Cardiff for the law school. She is super, super helpful. And I definitely wouldn't have had a training contract without her help. And just reach out, like, they are paid to help you with these things. So take the opportunity to get them. And she can steer you in the right direction of these events and of these specialisms. So if you're feeling really lost, then she's a great place to go. But just build on the things that you've already got. If you are already part, you know, last year maybe you were part of a society, but this year it's not been able to happen due to COVID, maybe speak to the people who run that society and say, can we run a virtual event? I'm happy to get involved. I'm happy to run it. And, you know, just putting yourself out there again. There are loads and loads of ways. And if anyone wanted to talk to me after the event about any of those things, just drop me a message on LinkedIn or something, because I'm sure you've all got, you know, surplus of opportunities, but they just don't always stand out to you at the time.
Brilliant. Thanks, Harriet. Amber?
Yeah, so alongside volunteering, I'm trying to think about virtual events. Obviously you can do volunteering virtual as well, but in terms of, you know, like open evenings and industry events, I would really recommend Legal Cheek. I'm sure some of you, or if not all of you, have heard of Legal Cheek, but I highly recommend you check them out, because even before coronavirus, when we did have events in person, which I miss so much, I used to go to a lot of those. So they would all be at different law firms, but it would first be a presentation on either commercial issue, just a current trend impacting the legal industry. It could be a diversity-focused panel event, really broad range, and just really interesting, because that gives you an insight into the legal industry. Obviously, depending on your interests as well, you don't have to sign up to all of them. They have a variety, and alongside that, you also have well, this was in person, and I think they still do this a virtual networking afterwards as well. So you can speak to the graduate recruitment teams, you can speak to other trainees at the firm. So not only are you developing your commercial awareness or your knowledge of the legal industry, you're also having that opportunity to, as we said before, go and meet the law firm and decide whether you want to apply to them. So definitely recommend looking at that. And I think there are a lot of events that are being created by either future trainees or other people in the profession. So do have a look at what's on LinkedIn. I highly recommend LinkedIn, actually, even just networking by commenting on people's posts. A lot of the opportunities that I've got involved with have been through LinkedIn or through people I've met through LinkedIn. So that's really powerful. And then the last point I was going to mention is about getting involved in groups. So obviously I'm interested in commercial law in London, so that's where my interests have gone. So I'm involved in a group called the London Young Lawyers Group. But actually they've got a wide group, a wide audience of all sorts of types of lawyers, criminal, public, private client. But if you're not interested in London, for example, or if you're not interested in commercial law, there are so many groups out there that you can join. Some might have a small membership fee, but within that you might get to go to events and back in person, or there are other benefits. But there are also lots of free groups as well. And it might even just be a case of a group on LinkedIn, for example, where people share similar interests and things. All of those different things you can get involved in, you can then talk about in your applications and also your interviews. So, for example, when I got involved with the London Young Lawyers Group, I ended up becoming onto the committee and running some of their events. So what I could do is talk about a specific event that I coordinated through that group on my application, which demonstrated such a range of skills. And I'd recommend using the STAR model if you haven't already heard of that. It's really good to talk about those kind of experiences. But yeah, I think if you look for it, there are still so many opportunities out there, if not more, actually. And as I said about earlier, virtual does make it really good for you to be able to log on, or as this event is being recorded, as many of events are being recorded, there's no harm in following up and just saying to whoever's organising it, I couldn't make it this time, I had lots of university work on, but could I have the recording and look at it later.
I'd just like to add to that and definitely say that now things are, there are probably more opportunities than ever that you can access. I did a program, it was with a company called Bright Network, and they did an internship, and I know loads of people from Cardiff Uni did it, I saw it on loads of people's LinkedIn, but there were literally like 50,000 people from around the world doing this one law internship. Everyone had the same experience, and there was networking involved in that, and some really, really useful tips, seminars, and just experiences that you could talk about in applications. And I think that will be running every year because it was super successful. So yeah, definitely have a look at Bright Network. And if you've not got a LinkedIn profile, make one, because I think that is probably, one of the key ways to network in a virtual environment.
Thank you. On that note, I know Bright Network, they are society partners, so I will just quickly mention that, they did run kind of an on-demand version equivalent, because originally it was run live, but all the sessions were recorded. And I'm sure, that's something they will continue going forwards, because I, for one, really enjoyed the experience as well. So just moving on to the next question then. I suppose, with so many graduates coming out of law school and perhaps maybe limited opportunities due to the pandemic, although we have spoken of Bright Network and alternative possibilities, I suppose it's only natural that students might, question their own self-belief, or maybe suffer from this idea of imposter syndrome, the idea where you might, not believe in your own abilities. So perhaps we could maybe touch upon that. I don't know if either of you had any tips for overcoming this. Perhaps, I think, Amber, you touched upon this, didn't you, during a podcast with the Legally Speaking podcast. And you've already talked about as well the fact that you struggled to obtain a training contract for 5 years. Perhaps maybe you could kick us off.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to feel like you're lucky to be there, or that you're not going to make it because, as I said, you don't fit the mold of a typical lawyer, or traditionally what a lawyer would be, perceived to be. And I think I really struggled with this, and all it did was hold me back. And we can always, always think you shouldn't compare yourself, but naturally as humans you do. So, people were leaving university or in second year and getting training contracts, and I was thinking, I'm doing so much. I'm doing everything we talked about with extracurricular. I was getting work experience. I was trying to do everything you needed to do to develop the skills, but I wasn't securing the training contract, and I just kept feeling more and more insecure, or lacking in that confidence that actually maybe I haven't got what it takes to be a lawyer. And that wasn't the case at all. Actually, if I stopped being so negative and disciplined on myself, I could look back and think, actually, I've achieved so much. But it can be so easy, especially as me and Harriet touched upon, so many rejections, which is just part of the experience, and it actually toughens you up. If law's not going to be an easy career. It is a challenging career. You're going to have knockback. So I kind of looked at the application rejections as being kind of, preparing me for a difficult career. But I think it wasn't until my 5th year, as I said, when I applied, that I was talking much more positively to myself. So instead of saying, are you capable of doing this? Oh, I'm not sure, really doubting myself. As kind of cheesy as it is, I did just become my biggest cheerleader. And so my last year, I focused on my strengths, of what I could really showcase and what I could bring to the firm to, that was unique to everyone else. And I said to myself, you've got nothing to lose. Worst comes to worst, you apply again next year. And I don't know if everyone's heard this, but the age of qualification now, the average age is like 29. We have years, you've got so much time. There's not that timeline as maybe there's perceived to be, that you have to leave university with a training contract. From my experience anyways, there was a very small handful of people who left university with training contracts. That's absolutely amazing if you do that. But that's not the case for everyone. And actually a lot of people go into paralegal work, or they go into something completely different, but then they still secure training contract later on. And actually they've got all this other amazing experience that you can bring to the table. So my biggest probably recommendation is to, as I said earlier, be critical on yourself by looking at your weaknesses and developing your skills in those areas so that you're constantly improving and developing, but also look back and write down all your achievements and why you're unique to everybody else who's applying. And there will be reasons, and if there isn't, go out and develop and get more experience, and you'll still, you'll create those things. But yes, definitely believe in yourself, as cheesy as that is.
Thanks, Amber. Hopefully that's given students a bit of motivation. How about you, Harriet?
Yeah, I would say, like, everyone is gonna start to doubt themselves if they've been rejected. It's only a natural human instinct to feel like that. And I think, first thing, don't kick yourself for feeling like that. Like, you've got to accept that you're not the only person feeling like that, and it is okay to not have this hard-faced appearance all the time that things are going amazingly, because unless you're true to yourself, then you're going to really struggle to keep going, keep motivating yourself to do well. And everything that, like, I'm about to say just sounds so cheesy, but as Amber said, you do have to really reflect on the things that you are good at, and everyone is good at something. Whether you think that that is something really insignificant, it's not. You know, if you're really, really good at making friends at university and you've made loads of friends, that is a strength, and that is something that you can talk about in applications. And it sounds so stupid, but when you write down, I did a mind map of the things that I was good at, the things that I've achieved, the things that I've improved on since starting university or from college, from school, because law firms are likely to ask you what your weaknesses are and how you've improved on these things. So the ability to turn negatives into positives is really important. And as Amber says, something that you will have to deal with in your future career as a lawyer. So just really being able to frame, if any negative statement that you have about yourself or about the direction that your training contract is going in, you can turn it into a positive. So if it's been that you've done another application and you've not even got to the interview stage, that's another practice of the formatting of an application, of cutting your words down, making things more concise. If it's you've got to an interview and you've still not got past the interview stage, it's you've had that practice of talking into a camera or talking to someone face to face. And I think really turning those negatives into positives is a way to keep going. And just remind yourself that you will get there in the end. If you're determined enough to want something, you will get there. If that takes you 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, you will get there. And in my cohort of trainees at TLT, there's there's one girl 3 years older than me and a girl who's like in her 30s. So, you know, she's decided that, you know, it's taken all of this time to get to where she wants to be, but she's eventually got there. And no one foresees themselves taking 10 years after they finish university to get to the place they want to be. But if it so happens, you're going to gain experience on the way, which is going to make you a better lawyer in the end. So, and just talking to people who are going to reaffirm these positive things is what makes it easier. You know, so much easier said than done saying, oh, just turn everything into a positive. But talk to your friends and, you know, the people around you who are going to support you. Your parents are probably going to be your biggest fans, or your grandparents who are going to just gas you up all the time about everything. So talk to them and then you'll feel miles better about it. And as I said before, making notes of everything that you succeeded on throughout the year, even in, you know, tiny sentence form, those little achievements are things that you can talk about in applications and spur you on to keep going.
Brilliant. Thanks, Harriet. So at university, there's this idea that you have to get a training contract during your university years, and a lot of people fail to consider different routes to becoming a solicitor. It'll be quite interesting to hear from you about how students can obtain paralegal work and how valuable your experience was as a paralegal.
Yeah, so when I left back in 2017, I actually struggled to get paralegal work. Even though I had my law degree and I got a good grade, I still just couldn't get the experience, get the role, because I didn't have the experience. So I'd never worked in an office before. The only experience I'd had was, you know, working in the pub or working in like a shop. So I just got rejected and thought, okay, what can I do here? Again, the whole reflection thing. I actually started working for a legal recruitment firm, and it was kind of like taking one step back to take 2 steps forward, because I worked there for like 3 months. I still focused on what I wanted to do. I knew my plan. I knew I obviously wanted to be in law, not in recruitment. But sometimes I think you've got to remember it's okay to make those decisions short term to help you to gain, you know, in the longer term. So I was there for 3 months. I gained the office experience, you know, even simple things like sending emails in a professional way, organizing your time, turning up on time. We don't always do that when you're at university. And, you know, speaking to clients on the phone. They're all these different skills that actually is, you know, it's something you need to develop. So I did that for a couple of months, and then I was kept applying for paralegal roles. There's so many agencies now, I think over the last couple of years, paralegal roles have just boomed. I think there's a lot of firms that have realised the benefits of having paralegal roles, having paralegals. And so the company I went through was called Flex Legal. So you may have seen them on LinkedIn. I think it's like F-LEX. And they helped me. They were so supportive. They helped me secure my paralegal role, my first one, which was in the Gherkin, which was pretty cool. I don't know if you guys know London very well, but it's a very snazzy building. But then again, I knew I wanted to keep progressing. And so, for example, that firm could only give me so many opportunities because it was very small. And so I think it's really important to have in your head, like, where do you want to achieve? And that will help you plan what paralegal positions or non-paralegal positions you go for. Because although I think paralegal experience is really good, because now when I'm a trainee, I know how a law firm operates. I've got, really great experience of things. I do pretty much trainee tasks now. There are so many benefits of working in a supermarket, working, at other places. You get so many amazing transferable skills like communicating with customers and things like that even if you don't do paralegal work or you don't have a training contract after university, just do something that you're interested in, and think about those transferable skills.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think that's very interesting. And over the next few years, paralegal roles will be more in demand with the new SQE system coming in. So, Harriet, what are your thoughts on the SQE system, and have you decided on which route you would select before commencing the training contract?
Oh, that's a tough question. I've not given it much thought, to be honest. It's not something that I've reflected upon, because it's obviously didn't apply to me when I was making those decisions. But I do think work experience is super valuable. And as you say, kind of paralegal roles and training up that way is something that is invaluable. Now, in one of my modules that I studied at university was because I did politics and law, politics and practice placement, which you could do as a law student as well at Cardiff, and that was working in the Welsh Assembly. And I gained so many skills, legal and non-legal, like Amber said, just from working in an office and getting those skills that I could, that definitely will help me in the future and have helped me so far. So I think kind of experience-based is strong, but I haven't given it an awful lot of thought, I must say. You've put me on the spot there.
How about you, Amber? Have you decided on the SQE or LPC?
So I'm doing the LPC, but I start that in January next year. I think for me, the SQE is still at the early stages. So, and I'm not sure whether it was an option yet for me. Well, I think I could have, but I think because, I'd start next year, my firm anyways would like us to do the LPC at the beginning. But as Harriet said, I think if people are deciding, if you have the option, think about all those different things, because both options are probably great, but it just depends what your skills are and how you operate best.
Sorry, I didn't make it very clear about that. I also didn't really have a choice, because when I got secured my training contract, they just automatically assumed that you were going to take the LPC route, again, due to the start date of my training contract. So I'll be starting the LPC in September.